The morning everything truly began was silent, cold, and heavy with falling snow. It was barely 6 o'clock, the sky still dark, the streetlights glowing weakly through thick white flakes, and I was standing alone in my driveway with a shovel in my hands. My gloves were wet, my boots were soaked, and my breath came out in slow clouds that disappeared into the storm. Every time I lifted the shovel, my arms burned. Every time I pushed snow aside, more fell back into place. It felt useless, like trying to empty the ocean with a cup, but I kept going anyway. That was who I was. If something needed to be done, I did it, quietly, without complaining, without expecting praise. My name is Daniel. I wasn't rich, I wasn't powerful, and I wasn't special. I was just a man who had learned, through pain and experience, that preparation was the difference between comfort and suffering. Where I lived, winters weren't pretty. They weren't something you took pictures of. They were dangerous. They shut down roads, killed power lines, froze pipes, and trapped people in their homes. One bad storm could change everything. And I never wanted to be helpless again. As I worked, I noticed something strange. Every house on my street was dark. No lights. No movement. No signs of life. Just silent buildings buried under snow. Every house except one. Across the street, Margaret Whitmore's mansion stood bright and perfect. Lights were glowing behind huge glass windows. Her driveway was completely clean, thanks to heated pavement. Not a single snowflake had survived. While I fought the storm with a shovel, she watched it melt beneath her feet. I stopped for a moment and leaned on my shovel. My chest was tight, not from exhaustion, but from something else. I looked up, and that's when I saw her. She was standing behind her window, holding a mug of coffee, staring directly at me. She was smiling. Not a friendly smile. Not a polite one. The kind of smile that says, "I see you, and I'm judging you." I looked away and went back to work. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself she didn't matter. But deep down, I knew she did. Because Karen, as everyone called her, had been part of my life ever since the day I moved into that neighborhood. 3 years earlier, I had arrived with a rented truck and a broken heart. My marriage had ended. Half my savings were gone. My confidence was shattered. All I wanted was a small house and a quiet life. No drama. No noise. No problems. Just peace. For a short time, that's exactly what I had. Then Karen noticed me. On my first day, while I was unloading boxes, sweaty and exhausted, she walked over in high heels and a designer coat. Her hair was perfect. Her smile was practiced. She introduced herself as Margaret from the HOA committee, and within 5 minutes, she was asking questions that felt more like an investigation than a welcome. Where did I work? How long would I stay? Did I plan renovations? Did I know the rules? Did I recycle properly? Did I intend to store anything in my garage? At the time, I thought she was just being thorough. I didn't realize she was building a file on me. From that day on, she watched everything I did. When I bought a generator for emergencies, she complained. When I stacked firewood in my garage, she complained. When I installed shelves, she complained. When I bought fuel containers, she complained. Every concern was wrapped in fake kindness and polite words, but the message was always the same. She didn't like that I was independent. She didn't like that I didn't need her. And most of all, she didn't like that she couldn't control me. I never gave her a real reason to attack me. I followed every rule. I checked city laws. I called inspectors. I kept records. I saved emails. My garage was cleaner than some people's kitchens. Everything was labeled, secured, and approved. Because I knew how people like her worked. You didn't fight them with anger. You fought them with paperwork. Back on that snowy morning, I heard her door open. I didn't need to look to know it was her. Only Karen would walk outside in a storm wearing perfect boots and expensive clothes. She crossed her heated driveway and stopped near the edge of her property. "Daniel," she called out sweetly. "Still struggling?" I forced a polite smile. "Just clearing snow." She laughed softly. "You really should hire professionals. It looks messy." Messy. My driveway. During a blizzard. At sunrise. Then she shifted the conversation, like she always did. "You know, all that stuff in your garage, generators, fuel, wood, it's risky. Fires happen when people aren't careful." "I've checked the rules," I said calmly. "It's allowed." She tilted her head and smiled. "Allowed doesn't mean wise." And with that, she walked away. Something about her tone made my stomach twist. It wasn't advice. It wasn't concern. It sounded like a warning. As winter grew harsher, power outages became common. Stores ran out of supplies. Gas stations closed. People panicked. But I stayed calm. My house stayed warm. My lights stayed on. My phone stayed charged. Neighbors began coming to me for help. I let them warm up. I charged their devices. I shared heaters. I never posted about it. I never bragged. I just helped. Karen noticed. She always noticed. Suddenly, people weren't running to her mansion for help. They were coming to my small house. They were thanking me. Praising me. Trusting me. And that drove her crazy. HOA letters started arriving more often. Inspections became frequent. Complaints increased. But every time, I passed. Every time, I was cleared. Every time, she lost. Then came the storm. The worst one in a decade. Wind howled like an animal. Snow erased roads. Power lines collapsed. The neighborhood went dark. Phones died. People panicked. Except me. My generator kicked in. My heater started. My lights glowed. My house became a small island of warmth in a frozen ocean. That night, while sipping coffee by my window, I saw her standing on her balcony. Wrapped in blankets. Shivering. Watching my glowing house in the darkness. Her eyes were filled with something I had never seen before. Not jealousy. Hatred. 2 nights later, I woke up coughing. The smell of smoke filled my house. And when I ran to my garage, my life was already burning. I woke up that night thinking I was drowning. My throat burned. My chest felt tight. The air was thick and bitter, like I had inhaled fire itself. For a few confused seconds, I lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what was happening. Then the smell hit me fully. Smoke. Heavy, poisonous smoke. My heart slammed against my ribs as I jumped out of bed and ran toward the hallway. The house was dim, filled with gray shadows moving like ghosts. Every breath made me cough. Every step felt unreal, like I was trapped inside a nightmare. I rushed toward the garage door and pressed my hand against it. It was hot. Not warm. Hot. I pulled back immediately, fear shooting through my body. That's when I knew. Something was terribly wrong. I grabbed my phone, dialed emergency services with shaking fingers, and ran outside barefoot into the freezing night. Snow covered the ground, cutting into my skin like knives, but I didn't feel it. All I could see was thick smoke pouring from the edges of my garage roof, rising into the dark sky like a signal flare. Within minutes, red and blue lights flooded the street. Fire trucks arrived. Sirens screamed. Neighbors opened their doors in confusion and fear. Firefighters rushed past me, dragging hoses, shouting commands, moving with trained precision. I stood there in thin pajamas, shivering, watching flames flicker through the small garage window. Everything I had worked for, every plan I had made, every precaution I had taken, was disappearing in front of my eyes. Water sprayed. Steam exploded into the air. Smoke thickened. Then slowly, painfully, The fire began to die. When they finally let me go near the garage, it barely looked like my garage anymore. The walls were black. The ceiling was gone in places. Shelves had collapsed. Plastic containers had melted into twisted shapes. My firewood was ash. My emergency food was ruined. My heaters were destroyed. My generator was warped. Everything I had stored for safety and survival was gone. I dropped to my knees without realizing it. Years of preparation. Thousands of dollars. Countless hours. Reduced to smoke. One night. One fire. One mystery. A firefighter approached me gently and put a blanket around my shoulders. He asked if I was okay. I nodded even though I wasn't. He told me they had contained it quickly. That it could have been worse. That my house was mostly safe. I thanked him, but his words barely registered. My mind was stuck on one question. How? I was careful. I was legal. I was organized. Nothing in that garage should have caught fire on its own. The police arrived soon after. They took photos. They asked questions. They inspected everything. I told them about my setup, my safety measures, my inspections. They listened politely and wrote things down. After a while, one of them sighed quietly and said, "We'll mark it as suspicious, but without evidence, there's not much we can do." Suspicious. Not criminal. Not intentional. Just suspicious. Case almost closed before it even opened. As dawn broke, neighbors gathered around, whispering, watching, pretending to be concerned. Some offered kind words. Some brought coffee. Some just stared. And then there was Karen. She appeared late. Perfectly dressed. Hair done. Makeup flawless. Like she was attending a brunch, not a disaster. She walked slowly toward me, hand over her mouth, eyes wide. "Oh my goodness, Daniel," she said softly. "How terrible. I'm so sorry." Her voice sounded caring. Her eyes didn't. They were calm. Cold. Satisfied. "I warned you about safety," she continued gently. "These things happen when people don't think ahead." I stared at her. My body was exhausted. My heart was broken. My mind was racing. But in that moment, something became very clear. This wasn't sympathy. This was victory. As she turned to walk away, she leaned slightly closer to me and whispered, so softly no one else could hear, "Maybe next time, you'll follow the rules." I froze. Every muscle in my body went stiff. I followed the rules. I always followed the rules. That was her way of telling me. Without confessing. Without proof. Without risk. That she had done this. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her and demand answers. I wanted to expose her in front of everyone. But I didn't. Because I knew something important. If I reacted emotionally, she would win. People like her thrive on chaos. They feed on reactions. They hide behind calm faces and clean records. So I stayed silent. I watched her walk back to her perfect house. I listened to her laugh with neighbors. I felt my anger burn inside my chest. And right there, standing in the snow beside my burned garage, I made a promise to myself. I would not touch her. I would not threaten her. I would not break the law. I would beat her at her own game. With patience. With evidence. With time. Because people like Karen always make mistakes. They get careless. They get arrogant. They think they are untouchable. And when they fall hard. That night, while sitting alone in my cold living room, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the dark walls, I opened a new folder on my laptop. I named it simply Documentation. And that was the beginning of her end. After seeing that footage of Karen sneaking near my backyard at midnight, something inside me changed. Until then, part of me still wanted to believe that maybe I was wrong. Maybe she was just controlling. Maybe she was just rude. Maybe she wasn't capable of something truly evil. But watching her move in the shadows, checking her surroundings like a thief, erased all doubt. That wasn't the behavior of a concerned neighbor. That was the behavior of someone planning something. I sat at my desk that night, staring at the paused video on my laptop. Her face was partially hidden under the hood, but her walk gave her away. Confident. Arrogant. Like she owned everything around her. I replayed the clip again and again, listening to my own heartbeat grow louder in my ears. I copied the file into 3 different folders. One on my computer. One on an external drive. One in cloud storage. If anything happened to me, that video would still exist. From that day on, I became even more careful. I changed my routines. I parked in different spots. I varied my schedule. I stopped sharing personal information with neighbors. I stopped posting anything online. My life became quiet and invisible. To her, it probably looked like fear. In reality, it was strategy. A few days later, she started showing up near my house more often. Sometimes she pretended to walk her dog. Sometimes she acted like she was checking her mailbox. Sometimes she just stood near her fence, pretending to talk on the phone while watching me. Every time, my cameras recorded everything. Every time, I logged it. One afternoon, I caught her trying to look into my garage while I was inside. I heard footsteps, turned around, and saw her peeking through the small side window. "Can I help you?" I asked. She jumped slightly, then smiled. "Oh, I was just admiring your renovation," she said. "Looks expensive." "It's safe," I replied. She nodded slowly. "Safety costs money." I pressed record. "You seem very focused on my garage," I added calmly. She laughed. "I care about the community." But her eyes said something else. They said, "I'm losing control." As summer approached, something unexpected happened. Karen started making mistakes. Small ones at first. She sent me an HOA warning that had the wrong address. She accused me of violating a rule that didn't exist. She tried to fine me without approval. Each time, I responded politely. Each time, I attached proof. Each time, she was embarrassed in front of the board. People began noticing. At meetings, members started questioning her. "Margaret, are you sure about this? Margaret, didn't we already clear that? Margaret, where's the evidence?" For the first time, she wasn't the unquestioned authority. She was being challenged. And she hated it. One evening, I received an anonymous message. From a neighbor. It simply said, "Be careful. She's obsessed with you." No name. No details. Just that. I saved it. Then another message arrived weeks later. "She's been asking about your schedule." Saved. Then another. "She said you don't deserve to live here." Saved. Piece by piece, a picture formed. She wasn't just annoyed. She was fixated. She saw me as a threat to her image. To her power. To her identity. In her mind, I wasn't a person. I was a problem. And problems had to be removed. The next major incident happened on a Friday evening. I was inside cooking dinner when my phone buzzed. Motion detected. Front yard camera. I opened the app. Karen was standing near my mailbox. Holding an envelope. Looking around. Then she slid it inside. And walked away quickly. I went outside and retrieved it. Inside was a printed notice. Final warning. Fire hazard. Legal action pending. No signature. No stamp. No official letterhead. Fake. Completely fake. She had made it herself. I sat at my kitchen table holding that paper, feeling something strange. Not anger. Relief. Because now, she had crossed a line. Impersonating the HOA was illegal. Threatening legal action falsely was illegal. Harassment was illegal. And I had video proof. Clear. High definition. Time-stamped. Cloud-backed. That night, I added a new section to my folder. Criminal evidence. And I knew. It was only a matter of time. She was building her own case. Against herself. Without realizing it. And soon, the entire neighborhood would see who she really was. By the time summer arrived, Karen was no longer hiding her hatred. The polite smiles were gone. The fake kindness had disappeared. Every time she looked at me, there was tension in her face, like she was holding back something dark. She had lost control over me, and that loss was eating her alive. People like her don't know how to exist without power. When they feel it slipping away, they panic. And when they panic, they make reckless decisions. I stayed calm. On the surface, my life looked normal. I went to work. I bought groceries. I mowed my lawn. I waved at neighbors. But behind the scenes, I was building a timeline of her behavior that looked more like a criminal case file than a neighbor dispute. Every message. Every fake notice. Every video. Every whisper. Every visit. Every threat. It was all there, organized by date and time. One afternoon, I received an official email from the HOA board. Special meeting scheduled regarding safety concerns. My name was mentioned. My heart slowed instead of racing. This was it. This was her move. She was going to try to remove me. I printed everything. I made copies. I prepared folders. Digital and physical. I didn't sleep much the night before the meeting. Not because I was afraid. Because I was ready. The meeting took place in the community hall, a clean, modern building with large windows and long tables. When I arrived, Karen was already there, sitting at the front like a judge. She was dressed perfectly. Confident. Smiling. Surrounded by papers. She looked sure of victory. Board members began arriving. Neighbors followed. The room slowly filled. People whispered. Everyone knew something serious was happening. The meeting started calmly. Routine topics. Budgets. Maintenance. Landscaping. Then Karen cleared her throat. I'd like to address a serious safety issue, she said. Every eye turned to her. She stood up and pointed at me. Certain residents are storing dangerous materials. Fuel. Equipment. Devices. Despite warnings. Despite risks. This endangers all of us. Murmurs filled the room. She continued confidently. I've documented multiple violations. Fires. Complaints. Threats. This cannot continue. She placed a thick folder on the table. My name was written on it. In bold. I waited. She opened her folder and began reading accusations. Unauthorized storage. Reckless behavior. Fire hazard. Harassment. Intimidation. Even claimed I had threatened her. It was unreal. She was creating a villain. Out of me. Right in front of everyone. When she finished, she looked at the board. I recommend immediate penalties. Heavy fines. Possible removal. Silence filled the room. Then the chairman turned to me. Daniel, would you like to respond? I stood up slowly. I felt every heartbeat. Every breath. Every eye. Yes, I said calmly. I placed my laptop on the table. Connected it to the screen. And pressed play. The first video appeared. Karen sneaking in my backyard at night. The date and time visible. Gasps filled the room. Next video. Her placing a fake notice in my mailbox. Clear. Undeniable. Next. Audio recording. Her voice saying, "Rules don't protect everyone." Next. Emails showing false complaints. Next. Photos of my inspected, approved garage. Next. City clearance documents. Next. Fire department reports. Next. HOA apology emails. One after another. Evidence. Truth. Reality. Her face changed. First confusion. Then fear. Then anger. Then panic. "This is manipulated," she shouted. I played another clip. Unedited. Raw. Original. She tried to interrupt. The chairman raised his hand. "Margaret, please." I kept going. Finally, I displayed one last file. A timeline. Every incident. Every date. Every action. 3 years. Mapped. Clear. Complete. When I finished, the room was silent. No whispers. No murmurs. Just shock. The chairman looked at Karen. "Is this true?" She opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. "No," she whispered. No one believed her. One board member spoke quietly. "Margaret, you impersonated the HOA." Another added, "You filed false reports." Another, "You harassed a resident." Another, "You abused your position." Her power collapsed in minutes. Years of control. Gone. The chairman announced an investigation. Immediate suspension. Legal review. Karen stood there shaking. For the first time, she looked small. Not powerful. Not superior. Just exposed. As people left, neighbors avoided her. Some stared. Some whispered. Some shook their heads. No one defended her. Outside, she walked past me. Her eyes full of rage and fear. "This isn't over," she hissed. I looked at her calmly. "It is," I replied. But I didn't know yet that her real downfall was still coming. After that meeting, the neighborhood changed in ways I never expected. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't dramatic. It happened slowly, like cracks spreading through glass. For years, Karen had controlled everything with confidence and fear. People followed her because it was easier than fighting her. They stayed quiet because they didn't want trouble. But once her mask slipped, once everyone saw the truth, that control vanished overnight. The first sign was silence. No more loud greetings from her porch. No more dramatic waves. No more public conversations where she acted like the community leader. She stayed inside. Curtains closed. Lights off. Her house, once bright and dominant, started to feel empty. Neighbors began talking. Not in whispers anymore. Openly. At mailboxes. On sidewalks. In driveways. They shared stories. About fines that never made sense. About threats. About intimidation. About being scared to decorate their own homes. About feeling watched. About feeling judged. About feeling small. And suddenly, they realized something. They weren't alone. They had all been victims. One by one, people started filing complaints. Not against me. Against her. Formal ones. Legal ones. Documented ones. The HOA board, already under pressure, opened a full investigation. Emails were requested. Records were reviewed. Financials were checked. Decision histories were examined. And the deeper they went, the worse it looked. Karen hadn't just harassed people. She had manipulated systems. She had abused authority. She had redirected fines. She had favored friends. She had punished enemies. She had treated the HOA like her personal kingdom. And now, that kingdom was collapsing. One evening, a neighbor named Mark stopped me while I was watering my lawn. "Man," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology." "For what?" I asked. "For not speaking up earlier. She made my wife cry once. Over a flower pot." "A flower pot?" He shook his head. "We were scared." "You weren't." "I didn't feel proud. I felt sad. Because no one should live like that." Soon after, letters arrived. Not for me. For her. Warnings. Notices. Legal reviews. Karen's suspension became permanent. Then her board membership was terminated. Then the city got involved. Then lawyers appeared. And that's when real karma started. Her luxury home, once her symbol of power, became her prison. Investigators visited. Inspectors came. Auditors knocked. Every corner of her life was examined. And things began to surface. Unpaid permits. Unauthorized renovations. Illegal extensions. Unreported rental income. Unapproved electrical work. Safety violations. The same rules she used to attack others now attacked her. Her driveway heating system? Not properly approved. Fine. Her glass balcony? Structural issues. Fine. Her backyard renovation? No permit. Fine. Her solar panels? Improper wiring. Shut down. Fine. Every week brought another notice. Another penalty. Another demand. Her savings began to drain. Her confidence disappeared. She started driving an older car. Then only one car. Then none. Delivery trucks stopped coming. Luxury packages disappeared. Her lawn went unmaintained. Paint peeled. Weeds grew. Her perfect house started to decay. Meanwhile, something strange happened to the rest of the neighborhood. It healed. People started talking again. Laughing. Helping. Sharing. Block parties returned. Kids played freely. Neighbors borrowed tools. People waved genuinely. Without fear. Without calculation. Without pretending. The place finally felt like a community. And I became part of it. Not as a hero. Not as a leader. Just as someone people trusted. One night, months later, I saw Karen standing in her driveway. Alone. Holding a stack of letters. Her shoulders were slumped. Her hair was unstyled. Her clothes were plain. She looked older. Smaller. Broken. For a moment, I felt something unexpected. Pity. Then she noticed me. Our eyes met. She looked away. Fast. Like she couldn't face me. And that's when I realized something. Her punishment wasn't the fines. It wasn't the investigations. It wasn't the money. It was losing respect. Losing control. Losing identity. She had built her life on power. And now she had none. Weeks later, rumors spread. She was selling her house. Quietly. Quickly. At a loss. No celebration. No farewell. No goodbye. Just leaving. The woman who once ruled the street like a queen was sneaking away like a shadow. And still, her story wasn't finished. Because the final chapter was yet to come. Karen's exit from the neighborhood didn't end the story. If anything, it marked the beginning of the next chapter. She wasn't gone yet, she still had legal options, she still had pride, and she still had a desire to control outcomes, even from afar. I kept my distance, living quietly, helping neighbors, keeping my life simple. But one morning, a thick envelope arrived at my door. My name was written on it, in bold black letters, stamped with a law firm's seal. My heart sank for a moment, but I stayed calm. I had followed every rule, every law, every HOA regulation to the letter. I had prepared for this. Inside was a lawsuit. She had filed against me, alleging harassment, property damage, and defamation. Reading the claims made me shake my head. The irony was staggering. She had orchestrated threats, intimidation, false complaints, and even burned my winter supplies, yet now she was painting herself as the victim. I could almost hear the absurdity of it echoing across the empty driveway, like a bad joke. I called my attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Caroline. She laughed softly when I read the claims aloud. "Daniel, breathe. You didn't do any of this. You followed the law. She's the one who overstepped. This is going to backfire spectacularly." That was a relief, but the thought of a lawsuit still made me tense. Courtrooms, legal jargon, cross-examinations, I had never wanted any of this. I just wanted to live in peace. The neighborhood, however, was watching. Word had spread quickly. People whispered about the lawsuit in driveways, mailboxes, and small gatherings. They knew the truth. They had seen her behavior. They had experienced her harassment. And now they were rooting quietly for me. Support came in small ways, neighbors stopping by to offer coffee, bringing documentation, sharing stories of how Karen had treated them. I wasn't alone, and that mattered more than I realized. The first hearing arrived, a cold, gray morning with clouds hanging low, threatening rain. The courtroom smelled of old wood and polished floors. Karen sat across from me, perfectly dressed, her expression a mixture of defiance and desperation. Her lawyer, a young man eager to prove himself, seemed tense. I sat quietly, documents neatly organized, notes ready. Caroline leaned close. "Stay calm. Let the evidence speak for itself." The judge called the session to order. Karen's lawyer went first, laying out accusations, pointing to fabricated timelines, and claiming emotional distress. I listened quietly, feeling a mix of frustration and amusement. The story was being told, but it wasn't true. And everyone in the room could feel it. When it was my turn, Caroline stood and addressed the court. She methodically presented evidence, each piece more damning than the last. Surveillance footage, emails, HOA complaints, recorded threats, fire department documentation showing the exact legal storage of my winter supplies. She went point by point, showing Karen's overreach, her lies, and her abuse of authority. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing, following each detail. The tension in the room was palpable. Then came the turning point. Caroline brought up the winter supplies fire, the one Karen had orchestrated to intimidate me. The court saw photographs, videos, and fire investigation reports confirming the incident. Karen's attempt to frame me collapsed instantly. She opened her mouth to speak, but